After her memory wiped clean, Luna fell for me. We were a couple for 3 years, the kind everyone looked up to, as if destiny itself had given us a nod. But on our wedding day, out of nowhere, she remembered everything from before her accident. Right then, she bolted with her ex, leaving me in shock. Half an hour later, her message popped up. 3 years of blank slate. I owe him a lot. Give me a few nights to make things right, and we can reschedule the wedding. I was completely floored. Standing in front of a hall full of stunned family and friends, I had to announce that the wedding was off. No more time, Luna, and there's no next time. The sudden cancellation threw the place into pandemonium. While I was trying to steady my shaking, my irate parents, along with our friends and family, started leaving one by one, turning the banquet hall into a mess. Luna's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Chen, looked genuinely sorry. They clung to me, saying over and over, "Alex, this happened so fast. We never thought she'd remember today. Don't worry, we'll sort her out when we get back, and you can plan the wedding again." I just shook my head, not saying a word, when a mocking laugh came from behind me. A voice spoke up. "I told you long ago." My sister, Mia, Luna's younger sibling, had always had a thing for Kenji. If it hadn't been for Luna's accident that made her forget him, she wouldn't have been with me. Now that Luna remembered, she's all about getting back with Kenji. Stop dreaming about marrying her. Hearing this, I froze. My heart tightened as if grabbed by an unseen force. Mia had never been fond of me. It took me a while to realize why, until I found out Kenji was her idol. Mr. Chen gave Mia a stern look, signaling her to hush, but she didn't care. She sneered and went on. "In Mia's heart, Kenji always comes first. You're nothing to her now." My parents looked increasingly distressed while I stayed silent, the pain spreading through my chest. 3 years ago, after Luna's accident and memory loss, Kenji vanished without a trace. Our parents arranged for Luna and me to meet. Our personalities clicked, and our connection was instant. We made countless beautiful memories together, but now those memories were in ruins. I finally understood that first loves are irreplaceable. While anyone can be a simp, Luna's first love was Kenji, and I was just another replaceable option. After everyone left, I went home alone. The house we were supposed to share. Every detail, from the decor to the smallest trinket, was something Luna and I had chosen together. Each item held a story, a sweet memory that now haunted me, refusing to fade away. As night fell, the dark sky felt like a heavy blanket, suffocating me. The darkness deepened, and my heart grew colder. It wasn't until the door unlocked that I snapped out of my gloom. It was Luna. She was back. She spoke softly. "Hey, this is your favorite camera model. I spent all day finding it." Luna placed a gift box on the table and nudged it toward me, her tone tinged with remorse. "I'm sorry." I looked at the gift, a special edition I adored. In the past, I might have been thrilled, but now it felt empty. What was the point of her trying to make amends? I was about to respond when she hit me with her next words like a cold splash. "But what happened at the wedding has nothing to do with Kenji. I hope you won't make things hard for him." Hearing Kenji's name made my chest ache. She continued, "Alex, I hope you'll drop out of the city's jewelry design competition." I froze, confused. "Drop out? Why?" She explained, "Kenji has been working on this competition for over a year. He's poured his heart into it. I heard you're the only one whose skills surpass his. It's a big deal. Winning means securing design rights for global luxury brands. I didn't expect Kenji to aim so high." "So what?" I interrupted, leaning in with frustration. "You want me to quit and let him win?" Guilt flashed in Luna's eyes, but was quickly replaced by entitlement. She kept saying I owed Kenji, that I had to make it up to him. It was a joke. We'd been in love for 3 years, and she knew how much I'd worked for this competition, way more than Kenji ever did. Yet she was asking me to step aside just to boost his chances. How could she be so messed up? The pain in my chest turned into a sharp knife, cutting deeper until I could barely breathe. Luna waited nervously for my answer. When I stayed silent, she playfully pinched my hand. Alex, I know you want to compete, but your family's wealthy and you've got so many opportunities. Just give this one to Kenji, okay? She had no clue. Just because I had a better background and was more accomplished, I had to let him win? The frustration inside me exploded. My jaw tightened, and when I looked at her again, my eyes were cold. In your dreams, I won't drop out, I said firmly. If he wants first place, he has to earn it with his own skills. I'm not giving him anything. Luna froze, clearly not expecting my blunt refusal. Her tone turned icy. Alex, how did you become so selfish and heartless? You already have everything. Why are you competing with him over this small thing? If it wasn't for the accident 3 years ago that made you lose your memory, I wouldn't have forgotten him or ended up with you. I'm just trying to make up for that. Can't you understand? No. The word burst out of me, loud and sharp, anger lacing my voice. My eyes reddened as I stared at her, pointing a finger at her face. The one who owes him is you. This has nothing to do with me. The room fell into a suffocating silence, the air feeling frozen. After my final words, I didn't look at her again. I stood up and headed to my room, the sound of the door slamming echoing loudly in the still night, creating a heavy barrier between us. My heart struggled to stay alive, but finally went cold. The day after our fight, Luna moved out, leaving a message saying she needed time to sort out her feelings for Kenji and that we could proceed with the wedding once she figured things out. She asked for my understanding. I stared at her message for what felt like forever until my eyes burned and turned red. Finally, I realized replying to something so impossible was pointless. Suppressing all my emotions, I threw myself into preparing for the jewelry design competition with everything I had. This was the dream I'd worked toward my whole life, and I wasn't backing down because of Luna's ridiculous request. In fact, it fueled my determination to win. As for Luna, it was like she had disappeared from my world entirely. Driven by resentment or maybe some twisted curiosity, I found myself scrolling through Kenji's Twitter late at night, alone in the silence. Since Luna regained her memory, his updates had been constant, almost obsessive. One post every few hours. On the day Luna left our wedding for him, Kenji shared a photo of a bride's silhouette with his hands tightly holding hers. The caption read, "Thank you, heavens, for bringing her back to me. You were destined to be my bride." As he prepared his entry for the design competition, Luna spent all day in his studio, gathering materials and brainstorming ideas. He posted a picture of her asleep on his lap with the caption, "No matter the time or place, you're always by my side. I'm so lucky to have you." They went bungee jumping in the mountains, went on survival trips, rode the wildest roller coasters, and tackled free-fall tower rides. The Luna in those photos was someone I'd never known. This was who she truly was 3 years ago. For the first time, she felt like a stranger to me, someone I'd never truly met. I read every single post and comment, letting the words stab deeper and deeper into my chest until I was raw and bleeding. Only then did I realize how agonizing and painful it is to try to erase someone from your heart. Half a month later, the day of the design competition arrived. The format was simple. No preliminaries, no finals, just one decisive showdown. Most participants had poured their lives into creating masterpieces for this event. Kenji was no different, and neither was I. As soon as I entered the venue, I spotted the dazzling couple in the crowd. Luna had ditched her usual elegant dresses for a bold, avant-garde outfit that matched Kenji's edgy style perfectly. From afar, they looked like the perfect, inseparable pair. Even though I had mentally prepared for this moment, seeing them hand in hand, so close, made it hard to breathe. I turned my head, forcing myself to ignore their presence. But someone wasn't about to let me off that easily. "Hey there." "Hello?" "I'm Kenji," he said smoothly, extending a hand toward me with a faint smile. Kenji was the epitome of a charming, free-spirited man in his leather jacket, exuding untamed boldness. In stark contrast, I stood stiffly in my tailored suit, composed yet overly serious. Clearly, Kenji and I were complete opposites. So this was the kind of guy Luna liked 3 years ago. I glanced briefly at Luna, who had followed him over, then shifted my gaze to his outstretched hand. I returned a quick handshake and replied curtly, "Hey." It had been days since I last saw Luna, and she had changed. Thick eyeliner and smoky eyeshadow now accentuated her features, making her look even bolder than in the photos. Kenji, noticing my lingering gaze, raised an eyebrow and said, "Before she lost her memory, Luna loved being free-spirited and bold like this. This is the real her, Alex. I bet you've never seen this side of her before." He was flaunting her like a prized possession, his words dripping with mockery. I didn't respond, but in the shadow of Luna's furrowed brows, I caught a fleeting emotion, something like reluctance or longing. Kenji noticed too. His face darkened as he stepped in front of Luna, cutting off her view. "Alex," he said, changing the subject, "I hear you've made a name for yourself in the design world, but the competition is fierce this time, so you better be prepared." Designers had come from all over the globe, but I wasn't intimidated. I had confidence in my abilities. Kenji, a private studio designer with few notable works, exuded an unshakable confidence. I couldn't help but admire how he carried himself as if victory was already his. The competition kicked off with transparency. Each designer presented their sketches and explained their concepts to the judges. Scores were given by global design masters and brand representatives, and the highest score would win. My turn came right after Kenji's. When he took the stage, he shot me a look, a mix of arrogance and disdain, as if to say the win was already his. I wasn't fazed. Inwardly, I even smirked. But that composure crumbled the moment his designs appeared on the screen. His work was identical to mine. Every detail, every precision-crafted element, every piece of conceptual thinking. It was a carbon copy of my design. How did he get my sketches? I wondered, scanning the audience until my eyes landed on Luna. She avoided my gaze, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. My chest tightened. I hadn't changed the locks at home, and the password on my computer was still her birthday. I had never guarded against her, and she had stabbed me in the back. But of course, Kenji's place in her heart was untouchable, though I understood why. Seeing it unfold in front of me shattered something inside. When I snapped out of my daze, the room was filled with thunderous applause. Kenji had received the highest score so far, 96.8. Victory seemed certain. The host called for the next participant. I walked onto the stage, my gaze meeting Kenji's smug expression. Then I spoke. "My design is identical to the previous participants." A stunned silence fell over the room as everyone turned to me, faces filled with disbelief. Kenji laughed derisively. Mr. Wong, excellent taste. Out of all the designs here, you chose mine to copy, but really, if you're going to plagiarize, at least put some effort into it. Even the details and concepts are identical." He was outright accusing me, painting himself as the victim. I glanced briefly at him, then let my gaze linger on Luna for 3 long seconds. Finally, I suppressed all emotion, smirking coldly as I said, "Plagiarism is indeed despicable. I have no intention of wasting the judge's time to determine who copied whom. Let's resolve this quickly." I pulled a spare USB drive from my pocket and plugged it into the computer. The moment the new version of my design appeared on the big screen, the room was filled with gasps and whispers of surprise. I calmly spoke, "So I decided to enter with this version of my design." Kenji's face instantly turned pale. The design I had submitted was one I'd worked on during my spare time, and it wasn't saved on the computer at home, so Luna had never seen it. The result was undeniable. My design received the highest score of 98.6, and I was crowned the winner after delivering my presentation, explaining every aspect of the design process and my concept. No one could question the originality of my work anymore. All I felt was a shift from admiring Kenji's design to suspicion and then anger. Without any solid proof, his plagiarism was already assumed, and he was disqualified from the competition. His rank was erased, and he was banned from representing himself or his studio in future contests. In just a few hours, the results had turned from victory to ruin. As I stood on the stage, receiving the award and posing for pictures, I noticed Luna standing far below in the crowd. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of joy, guilt, and perhaps relief. But Kenji had long since disappeared. After the ceremony, Luna found me in the backstage lounge. "Alex, congratulations," she said softly. I lowered my gaze, focusing on the bouquet of sunflowers she was holding. She had once told me she was my biggest fan and that when I won, she would give me a bouquet of sunflowers. She remembered that, but I wondered if she remembered how much I despised betrayal. The bouquet was large and heavy. She held it up for so long that her arm started to tremble. But I still didn't take it. Luna's eyes reddened with frustration. She pushed the flowers forward again. "I was wrong to take your design without your permission, Alex. I admit it." Then, in a softer voice, she added, "But can you help me? Can you explain to them that Kenji didn't mean to steal your design? He didn't do it on purpose. If he's labeled as a plagiarist, his life will be ruined." The chill in my chest grew more intense as I looked at her, my eyes full of coldness. I smiled sarcastically. "Did you ever consider that if I didn't have a backup design to clear my name, the one accused of plagiarism would be me? The one whose life would be ruined would be me?" Luna froze, her face turning pale. She couldn't even bring herself to look me in the eye anymore. Her whole demeanor collapsed as she weakly whispered, "I'm sorry, but I didn't want to hear it." The flowers were still forced into my arms. At that moment, Kenji appeared, rushing over and pulling Luna into his embrace. He glared at me with protective fury. "You've already taken first place. Now you want to steal Luna from me too? Now my reputation is ruined. Are you satisfied?" I smiled coldly and replied, "Yes, I'm quite satisfied. Congratulations." He cursed loudly and charged at me. Before he could take another step, Luna quickly stepped between us, trying to stop him. "Kenji, please calm down. Let's think of another way. Don't do this. I'm upset too." Kenji's face was filled with resentment. He glared at her, muttering, "You've changed, Luna. You promised me you'd do anything to make up for this. How long has it been, and you already forgot what you said that night? The night you stayed out after regaining your memory. The night that should have been our first night together as newlyweds. You're really with him." A bitter laugh curled inside me. I caught Luna stealing a quick glance at me, her expression full of panic. She said, "It's not like that, Kenji. Please calm down. We'll talk about this later." She took a deep breath, hesitating before speaking softly to calm him. But Kenji wouldn't listen. He continued to insist, "So you're helping him and not me? Do you still love him?" Luna looked at me, her gaze conflicted before falling silent. The silence between us was unbearable, snapping something in Kenji. His eyes turned cold as he glared at me one last time before storming off. Not even bothering to look back, Luna turned to me and said, "Alex, just give me a little more time. Once I comfort him, I'll come back to you. Will you wait for me?" She said it, but still turned and walked away, glancing back as she did. I called out, "No," but she didn't hear me. She was already gone. I watched the two figures in the distance, tangled together, as memories of the time I spent with Luna resurfaced. Back then, we got along so well, almost never fighting. Whenever we did, I was the first to apologize, always finding ways to make her happy. It seemed like, up until now, she had never gone to such lengths to win me over. Under the streetlights, their shadows shifted and finally embraced, their silhouettes elongated in the dim light. Maybe it was the dry, late autumn air, but my eyes felt uncomfortably dry, and a sharp pain settled in my chest. I turned away and tossed the sunflowers Luna had given me into the trash can. Since I had already decided to sever ties with her completely, I called her, asking her to come back so we could clear things up. She agreed, and I faintly heard Kenji's voice on the other end of the phone. He insisted on coming with her to make sure she got to me safely. The rain poured down heavily. When Luna arrived, half of her shoulder was soaked. My gaze fell on her damp shoulder, and I found myself frozen for a moment. She noticed my stare and quickly looked at her shoulder, her brow furrowing. A nameless emotion flickered in her eyes. In the past, on every rainy day, I would always pick her up, holding an umbrella tilted towards her. After we got home, she would be completely dry, while my shoulder would always be soaked. But now, her shoulder was damp too, perhaps feeling embarrassed. Luna awkwardly explained, "Kenji's umbrella was probably a bit too small. It wasn't intentional." I had no interest in hearing her explanation. I only felt a sense of regret for myself. What had once been so genuine and passionate between us had now ended up like this. I pointed to the box on the table and said, "All your personal belongings have been packed. Check if you've missed anything." She hesitated, then looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" I replied calmly, "Luna, since the day you ran away from our wedding, we've never been able to go back. Let's break up. From now on, you and I have no more ties." I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to ease the tension in my forehead that had been there for so long. She asked, "Break up?" She staggered back a step, her eyes filled with disbelief. "Is it because of Kenji?" "Alex, I've explained this to you before. I only feel guilty towards him now. I wanted to make up for the things I owe him because of my amnesia. Can't you understand? Please, just give me more time." Luna looked up at me, her eyes full of confusion, as if my cold attitude had hurt her. She appeared lost, uncertain, and even a little desperate. She seemed to think that because I loved her, I should understand and forgive all her actions. But why should I? After Luna ran away from our wedding, a friend of mine looked into her past relationship with Kenji. They had known each other since high school and attended the same university. They were the top couple on campus at the time. 3 years ago, Kenji wanted to study abroad, but Luna opposed it. After their argument, she chased him to the airport where she got into a car accident. The blood clot in her brain pressed against the surrounding nerves, causing her memory loss. Kenji, despite hearing about the accident, didn't return from abroad. The Chen family had always disapproved of Kenji, so they conveniently never mentioned the past and pushed for Luna and me to be together. I had always been sincere about relationships. For me, love was something that belonged to two people. So when Luna and I got together, I never asked her about her past, and the Chen family never brought it up either. Kenji and I were entirely different people. He was cheerful, humorous, and carefree. He'd sneak out of class with Luna, drink and party, and challenge all kinds of extreme sports. I, on the other hand, was reserved, gentle, and boring. If it were Luna before her accident, she would never have fallen for someone like me. But now that she had regained her memory from 3 years ago, what did that mean for the past 3 years we had spent together? If I delved into the details, I was just as much a victim of this entire mess as she was. Why should I bear the brunt of this painful betrayal? At this moment, my heart, battered and broken, had turned to stone. No matter how heartbroken or sad she was, it no longer mattered to me. I turned away, moved the box to the door, and spoke in an indifferent, distant tone. "Luna, please leave." "Alex, please don't kick me out." Luna began crying, shaking her head in pain. I remained cold and expressionless. "Please leave." In the past, no matter what she did wrong, as long as she showed affection, I would easily forgive and accept her. But not this time. I couldn't even bring myself to care about who was right or wrong. I simply couldn't love her anymore. Let me slowly, piece by piece, pull her out of my world. In the end, despite her unwillingness, Luna had no choice but to leave. I contacted a locksmith and had the locks on the doors replaced overnight. Without her, the house was still the same. All the decorations and arrangements remained unchanged, but something was missing. The lights didn't seem as bright as before, the sofa wasn't as soft, and even the air I breathed felt faintly bitter, almost repulsive. I called a cleaning service and spent half a day clearing out everything related to Luna, watching all the traces of the life we once shared being removed. The pain in my heart seemed to dissipate bit by bit, as if it was being cleared away along with the belongings. After 7 or 8 large boxes were hauled away, the house felt eerily empty, but for some reason I felt lighter, as though the heavy burden weighing on my chest had suddenly been lifted. I blocked all of Luna's contact information. If we were going to end this, it had to be final. But she seemed to have lost her mind, desperately trying to reach me. When I woke up, I had more than a dozen missed calls from unfamiliar numbers. I chose one and returned the call. The call was quickly answered, and I heard her voice on the other end. "Alex, did you block me? Why aren't you answering my calls?" Her voice was trembling and hoarse, as if she'd been crying. I didn't answer. I simply hung up. She called again. I blocked her once more. A moment later, a new number appeared on my screen. Having spent 3 years with Luna, I knew her well. She seemed carefree on the surface, but deep down, she was stubborn and obsessive. She had always been like this. I didn't want to be harassed all day. So reluctantly, I answered the call. "Luna, we've broken up. What do you want?" She choked out. "I don't agree to break up. Do you hear me?" The words came out almost like a cry, echoing in a large, empty space. When I didn't respond, she stubbornly continued. "Why don't you answer my calls? Why?" "Yeah," I replied calmly. "There's no need for us to stay in touch anymore." I said it seriously. On the other end of the line, there was silence for a moment, followed by quiet sobs. After a long pause, she spoke again. "Before, no matter how late it was, I could always find you. That was true, but that was before. For the 3 years we were together, I always kept my phone on, 24/7, ready to answer her calls and messages as soon as they came in. I had truly loved her with all my heart." I said, "That was before. It won't be like that anymore." And with that, I hung up and blocked her number once more. After winning the jewelry design competition, the company quickly brought in over a dozen new projects, and I became thoroughly busy. Luna tried to contact me every day, but my secretary always kept her at the door, and I never saw her. One evening, just before the end of the workday, another unfamiliar call came in. I hesitated for a few seconds, but finally pressed the answer button. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar at first, but soon I recognized it. It was Kenji. I glanced at my watch. It was still early, so I agreed to meet him. The cafe for the meeting was right beneath my office building. I remembered Luna used to love their caramel macchiatos, and we'd come here together often. The coffee still tasted the same, but everything had changed. I shifted my gaze from the cup to Kenji, who sat across from me. I asked, "Do you need something from me?" Kenji raised his eyes to look at me, his gaze slowly sweeping across my face. Perhaps he didn't get the reaction he wanted because his expression flickered with disappointment. He spoke. "You've only known Luna for 3 years. Well, I've had over 8 years with her. You can't compare to me. Those 3 years she lost due to amnesia, you took advantage of that time. Now that her memory is back, she'll surely end up marrying me." I stayed silent, patiently waiting for him to finish. After a brief pause, he continued. "You stole those 3 years from me. Now that I've returned, you should step aside and stop interfering with Luna." It took me a moment to realize he had come to stake his claim and show his dominance. I slowly traced the rim of my coffee cup with my fingers, my expression calm, even amused, as I responded, "Oh, Mr. E. Wright, you don't need to worry. The day Luna ran away from our wedding, we already officially broke up. If you can, maybe you should persuade her to stop bothering me." Kenji's face turned pale with anger, as if he hadn't expected me to be so indifferent. He scolded, "You're a hypocrite. You keep saying you've broken up with Luna, but you act like you don't care at all. If you hadn't used some tricks, how could she still be obsessed with you? Don't think I don't know. You're all talk and no action. Completely fake." He suddenly seemed to lose his mind, shouting in frustration. His eyes were red with anger as he hissed through clenched teeth, "Alex, Luna was mine before, and she will be mine again." I couldn't help but laugh at his words. The sound escaped before I could stop it. I said, "If you were with Luna when she had her car accident, she wouldn't have lost her memory and ended up with me. You talk about having over 8 years of history with her, so why are you afraid of me taking her from you? I motioned toward the door with a slight nod. Why don't you ask her yourself? Does she still love you? Kenji, confused, turned to look in the direction I pointed. Luna was standing there, looking utterly lost. He asked, Luna, you used to love me the most. What about now? This question seemed to stun Luna, and she sank to the floor, her hands covering her face as she sobbed in a broken, muffled voice. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Hearing her uncertain answer, Kenji completely lost control. He shouted, Not sure? How can you not be sure? He only stole those 3 years while you had amnesia. He's nothing but a thief. I'm your true love. You've only grown used to him. Now that we've reconciled, you'll forget about him soon. Luna remained silent, not saying a word. Her silence seemed to ignite Kenji's rage. He suddenly grabbed a water glass and threw it at my feet, yelling, Fine, fine, I've been foolish, I'm leaving. The glass shattered loudly on the floor, drawing the attention of several people around us. After Kenji stormed out, I expected Luna to chase after him like last time, but this time, she didn't. Instead, she hurriedly asked the waiter for a cotton swab and iodine, gently cradling my hand and wiping the cut I hadn't noticed. It was then that I realized the glass had splintered and cut my hand, leaving a painful, bloody mark on my skin. I said, Thanks, but I don't need it, and coldly pulled my hand away, avoiding her gaze as I stood up and left. Luna's face was pale, her fragile body trembling slightly as she tried to steady herself. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, blinding her and causing tears to spill from her eyes. The memories of the 3 years we had shared together felt like knives repeatedly cutting into the raw nerves of her heart. Maybe at this moment, she regretted it, but I didn't care about her feelings anymore. I wasn't the kind of person who would tie all my emotions to a single woman. I suppose the next time I saw Luna was a week later. She was dressed in a blue hospital gown, probably sneaking out from the hospital, even from a distance. A faint smell of alcohol wafted from her as the wind blew. After our last meeting, I heard that Kenji had a violent outburst with her. He even laid hands on her, causing the police to get involved. Because he hurt someone, Kenji was taken to the police station by the Chen family. He begged Luna to forgive him and help him, but all he received in return was a silent refusal. After that, Luna started drinking heavily every day, often getting so drunk that she was sent to the hospital for stomach pumping. Mrs. Chen called me, crying and begging me to check on her, but I refused. I looked at the person in front of me, frowning slightly, instinctively stepping back a step. There was no trace of sympathy in my eyes, as if the person before me was a complete stranger. Alex? Luna opened her mouth, gripping the hem of her clothes so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her long hair hung in disarray, and she looked like someone drowning, waiting for me to save her, helpless. But I remained unmoved, silently observing her. Her expression suddenly turned tender and serious. Alex, I was wrong. I regret it. I used to think that forgetting Kenji during the 3 years of amnesia was the biggest hurt I could cause him. So I tried to make it up to him. But now I realize, the one I hurt the most is you. She paused for a moment. Big tears were already streaming down her face as she continued. If I hadn't run away from the wedding, we'd be so happy now. It's me who hurt you without thinking of the consequences. Can we start over? Let's have the wedding again, like before. Please. Let's try again. The last few words were almost choked out in a sob. Her tear-filled eyes were full of longing, like a vast, deep ocean. It seemed that if I wasn't careful, I would be drowned in it. If this had happened before, I might have already drowned in that sea of emotion. But I was no longer the person I used to be. Even though she was sobbing before me, looking so pitiful and making me feel some sympathy, my heart remained calm. I raised my head and met Luna's gaze. My voice was cold as I said, No, our relationship was always a mistake. There's no need to try again. She shook her head desperately. No, that's not true. We used to love each other so much. How can it have been a mistake? I sneered and took another step back, avoiding her touch. After your amnesia, you could have fallen for anyone. That person didn't necessarily have to be me. Just like I said before, you only get one first love, but there can be countless simp relationships. But I didn't want to be a simp anymore. I paused and continued. Luna, stop wasting your time on me. Not everything in life has a second chance. Luna silently watched my back as I turned to leave. After a long while, she lowered her head and gave a bitter smile. Her laughter was laced with a faint sob. I didn't turn back, taking long strides away from her. From now on, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, if we meet again, we'll just be strangers.